Imagine, just for a second, that you are trying to manage a team,
Okay.
but your team members aren't, sitting in cubicles down the hall from you. They are scattered across hundreds, maybe even thousands of kilometers,
That is a very different dynamic.
right? And they are driving heavy machinery,
Yeah.
like massive trucks, under incredibly tight deadlines, navigating unpredictable weather, and just dealing with constant, unrelenting pressure.
It's basically a logistical pressure cooker.
Exactly. And you are just sitting in an office somewhere, or maybe it's your kitchen table, staring at a screen. So the question is, how do you keep the entire operation from just completely falling apart?
Which is a very real risk when you have that much physical distance.
Totally. So welcome to today's deep dive. Today our mission is to unpack this really insightful briefing we've got from Greystride.
Right, and they specialize in these extreme remote work scenarios, specifically fleet transport and, long-distance drivers.
Yeah, but while this source focuses on that high-stakes world of fleet transport, the core mission of our deep dive today is actually way broader. We're looking at how replacing informal, casual communication habits with structured systems can basically transform chaos into control.
And that applies to almost any field.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, whether you're routing 18-wheelers or just managing a remote team of software engineers, there is a lesson here. It's a masterclass in operational sanity.
Because the absence of physical proximity forces this massive reliance on communication. I mean, if that communication is flawed, the entire operational structure just begins to wobble.
Wobble is a good word for it.
Yeah, and we see this wobbly foundation all the time in standard remote work, right? But in fleet transport, the consequences of that wobble are magnified exponentially.
Because the stakes are so much higher.
Exactly. You're dealing with severe safety risks, massive financial losses, critical supply chain delays, and all of this stems from variables that are entirely out of your physical control.
Like the weather or traffic.
The weather, the traffic, the machinery itself breaking down. You have to rely entirely on the people behind the wheel and the exact information they feed back to you.
Which means, before we actually look at the solution, we have to understand why the default way most people communicate is, well, actually broken.
It's fundamentally broken.
Because on the surface, the way most of us talk to our teams feels completely natural.
Sure, but natural does not always mean effective.
Right.
The data actually shows that the root cause of those costly problems, the delays, the safety risks, frustrated customers, they almost always trace back to a single source, unclear or inconsistent communication.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source specifically calls out these incredibly common, almost throwaway phrases that managers use every single day.
Oh, I know exactly the ones you mean.
Right. Things like, just send a WhatsApp, or call if there's a problem, or my absolute personal favorite, just let us know when you get there.
People say that all the time. And managers use those phrases because they sound accommodating, They project this image of a laid-back, highly trusting leadership style.
Yeah, they sound like you're being the chill, flexible boss.
Right.
But, okay, think about it like this. Imagine you are trying to cook a really complex, high-end restaurant recipe, but the measurements are just like a handful of flour, or a splash of milk, or just bake it until it looks done.
That sounds like a nightmare for consistency.
Exactly. If you're just cooking for yourself on a Sunday afternoon, sure, maybe you get lucky once and it tastes great. But if you were trying to run a commercial kitchen,
Serving 500 meals a night.
yes, serving 500 identical meals during a dinner rush, relying on a splash of milk is impossible to scale. It absolutely guarantees a disaster eventually.
That analogy actually hits the core of the issue perfectly, because informal communication, it feels like flexibility, but it's actually just inconsistency disguised as flexibility.
An illusion.
It is, and it raises a fundamental operational question, right? What happens to an enterprise when every single person is operating on a totally different set of assumptions?
Complete chaos.
Yeah.
Just total chaos.
Let's look at the actual fallout of this trap. Say your directive to a driver is simply call if there's a problem. You are forcing that individual to make a highly subjective assumption about what constitutes a problem.
Because problem means different things to different people.
Exactly. Take a veteran driver, 20 years of experience. He suffers a blown tire on a wet highway. To him, changing that tire is a minor inconvenience.
He's probably done it 100 times.
Right. So he rolls up his sleeves, swaps it out in 45 minutes, and gets right back on the road. He feels like a hero. In his mind, he handled it.
So he doesn't even call.
He doesn't think it warrants a phone call to bother the boss, no.
But the reality back in the office is entirely different. To the dispatch team, that unannounced 45-minute delay means the truck is going to miss its incredibly tight delivery window.
Which sets off a massive chain reaction.
Oh, huge. That means the customer's loading dock is just sitting empty. They are paying union warehouse workers overtime just to stand around and wait.
And that customer has got the dispatch office furious.
Asking where the truck is, and dispatch has no idea.
Exactly. Because the driver made a localized assumption based on his immediate reality. But the central office needed objective facts to manage the broader operation.
Because of that unstructured approach, the office is thrust into reactive mode.
Totally reactive. They have to spend their time frantically chasing updates, apologizing to angry customers, trying to reorganize their whole logistical puzzle on the fly.
And the customers are left in the dark until the last possible second.
Which ruins trust. If your communication depends on individual habits instead of a system, you don't have control. You merely have risk.
And think about your own remote team right now if you're listening. If you tell your graphic designer, just ping me when the draft is done.
You're doing the exact same thing.
You are. You're creating the exact same operational risk as the fleet manager saying, call me when you get to the depot. You're leaving it up to their interpretation of when the draft is done enough to share.
Meanwhile, you might have a client presentation looming that completely depends on it.
Exactly.
And that lack of structure rapidly degrades trust on both sides. The central office realizes they can't rely on the driver to update them naturally, so what do? They start micromanaging.
Oh, you start calling every hour.
Wait, are you? What's your ETA? And that annoys the driver, who feels disrespected and untrusted. So the driver starts communicating even less. It's this vicious cycle born entirely from a gap in expectations.
But, realizing that informal texts are dangerous is only half the battle. You can't just tell a driver or a remote employee, hey, stop being informal, without giving them a replacement tool.
Right, you need a framework.
So what does a rigid but actually usable framework look like in a moving cab? How do we engineer a predictable flow of information without totally overwhelming the people doing the actual heavy lifting?
Well, what's fascinating here is that we have to establish the when and the what. The very first step is setting crystal clear check-in points.
Okay, so scheduling the communication.
Yes, the framework lays out a very specific list of mandatory check-in moments.
Like what?
It's departure from the depot, arrival at the loading point, departure from the loading point, mid-route progress updates for those really long hauls, arrival at the delivery point, and finally, completion of offloading.
Okay, I see. Those aren't arbitrary times on a clock. It doesn't text me every 2 hours.
No, it's tied to specific operational milestones.
That makes sense.
Tying communication to physical milestones entirely removes the ambiguity. Then, once we have the when, we have to define the what.
Right, what they actually say.
Because a text message from a driver that just says arrived is entirely useless in a complex operation.
Yeah, arrived where? The main depot gate, the actual loading bay.
Exactly. When exactly did you arrive? Are you currently being loaded, or are you sitting in a queue behind 5 other trucks?
So the update has to include the specific location, the time, any delays or issues, and the exact load status.
That's the baseline.
But I'll be honest, I struggle to believe that this goes over well.
With the drivers.
Yeah, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a driver here. If I'm driving a 40-ton truck through a rainstorm, and my phone buzzes demanding a mandatory, highly detailed status update the second I hit a loading bay, my first thought isn't, oh, I feel so supported.
You're thinking it's annoying.
My first thought is, get off my back, I'm working. Doesn't this level of structured reporting breed resentment? Won't they hate 6 mandatory checkpoints?
That is exactly what most managers assume will happen. It sounds like micromanagement. But what's fascinating here is the psychological mechanism at play and what the data actually shows.
Which is?
When communication is structured and predictable, it actually removes the massive cognitive weight of decision fatigue.
Wait, how does adding more reporting rules reduce mental weight?
Think about the informal scenario we discussed earlier. Call me if there's a problem. The driver is now carrying the cognitive load of constantly evaluating every single bump in the road.
Oh, I see.
Is this weighbridge delay long enough to be a problem? Will my boss be annoyed if I call him about this? Will he be angry if I don't call him?
That mental juggling is exhausting.
It really is. Every time they pick up the phone to report an issue, it feels like they're confessing a failure. But if the protocol simply states, you message us when you arrive at the loading point, and you include your delay status, There's no guessing.
The expectation is transparent.
Exactly. It turns a stressful judgment call into a mere data transmission.
Structure provides freedom. The rule does the heavy lifting, not their own judgment in the heat of the moment.
That's a great way to put it. Structure creates boundaries, and boundaries neutralize tension. The driver knows that if they hit their check-in points, they are doing exactly what is required.
And the office won't bother them.
Right. The office won't be nagging them in between those points, because the office knows exactly when the next update is coming. You replace a relationship based on anxiety with a relationship based on predictability.
So now that we have the theory, we know when they need to communicate and what they need to say. The next massive hurdle is the actual execution.
Implementation is always the hardest part.
Because the system has to survive contact with reality.
Yeah.
How do you format this so it actually works for an exhausted driver sitting in a cab who just wants to get the job done?
This brings us to the anatomy of the perfect update, and the golden rule here is to keep it brutally simple.
Brutally simple.
If protocols are time-consuming or complicated, people will simply bypass them. The goal is consistency, not perfection.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. The framework actually provides an exact standard format example, and it is just 4 lines.
It's very concise.
It goes like this. Location, Bloemfontein, time, 14.3, status, offloading, delay, 1 hour due to queue.
It is incredibly elegant.
It really is. But let's elevate why this is so brilliant. It's not just that tapping out 4 lines is fast for the driver.
Yeah.
What the framework reveals is that those 4 lines aren't just a casual text message. They are a standardized data packet.
Yes.
When you train a team to communicate like this, you are stripping away all the adjectives, all the emotion, the narrative. You aren't getting a long story about how bad the traffic was.
You're getting the facts.
You give the dispatch system pure, actionable data. You are essentially turning human conversation into an operational API.
That is the perfect way to look at it, an API for logistics. Let's trace the mechanics of how a dispatcher actually uses that specific data packet.
Okay, let's play it out.
When that 1 hour delay due to queue message comes in from Bloemfontein, it triggers a logistical chain reaction. The dispatcher looks at their board. They see that truck B is heading to the exact same facility in 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Because they have the data from the first truck, they instantly reroute truck B to a different warehouse, avoiding a massive bottleneck.
That saves so much time.
And they call the original warehouse and adjust the forklift operator's schedules. They update the end customer. All of that massive, complex, logistical problem-solving is powered entirely by 4 lines of text sent from a cab in Bloemfontein.
And this brings us to a crucial warning in the research. Channel discipline.
Yes, this is where a lot of companies fail.
Because having that perfect API-style format is completely useless if, like, half your drivers text it on WhatsApp, a quarter of them email it, and the rest try to shout it over a crackly phone call.
Too many communication channels create fragmentation. You have to categorize the type of communication and mandate a specific tool for it.
So what's the breakdown?
The framework suggests using WhatsApp or a dedicated fleet management system for those daily routine updates.
Okay, the Bloemfontein texts.
Right. You use phone calls only for urgent, critical emergencies like an accident, and you use email or system uploads strictly for static documentation.
Like sending a photo of a signed delivery receipt. But wait, why the strict ban on phone calls for standard updates? I mean, I know plenty of managers who prefer to just quickly call a team member and say, hey, where are we at?
Because a phone call leaves no searchable historical log, over-reliance on phone calls is a massive operational vulnerability.
How so?
Imagine a busy dispatch office. A controller takes a call from a driver, scribbles, "Truck 4 arrived, 1 hour delayed," on a sticky note.
I've been in that office.
Right, and then they immediately get distracted by another ringing phone from an angry client. The shift changes. The sticky note gets swept into the trash.
Oh, no.
Now, the night shift dispatcher has absolutely no idea where truck 4 is or why it's delayed.
It's just gone.
But when you use a text-based system or a fleet app for routine updates, the system itself maintains the log. The information is trackable, searchable, and completely immune to human memory lapses.
You are basically building a living, searchable database of your operation in real time. Consistency transforms fleeting conversations into an actual institutional asset.
It really does. But having the system on paper is one thing. As you pointed out earlier, these systems are ultimately run by human beings.
Right.
You have to cultivate a culture that supports the system.
So how do companies typically get that wrong? Where do they stumble when they're actually trying to roll this out to real people?
Well, the ultimate goal is to build a culture of proactive communication. Most businesses operate reactively. They only communicate when something is already on fire.
When it's too late.
Right. A proactive culture reports the early signs of smoke.
The briefing gives some great specific examples of this. Things like a driver sending an update saying traffic building up ahead, or possible delay at the weighbridge, or customer running behind schedule.
Notice the nuance there.
Yeah.
The driver hasn't actually suffered a delay yet.
Right, it's just a heads up.
They are merely providing the central office with foresight. This allows the dispatch team to act before the customer is ever impacted. It transforms the dispatcher from a firefighter into a strategic planner.
That's a huge shift.
It is, but to get your team to communicate proactively, you have to avoid the common implementation traps.
And the most common trap they mention is too many instructions. Which, I mean, just immediately overwhelms the team.
Because human cognitive capacity is limited, especially under the intense pressure of driving long distances or executing complex tasks.
It's like imagine downloading a new app on your phone,
Okay.
and the second you open it, it hits you with a 20-page user manual.
I delete the app.
Instantly.
Yeah.
You instantly close it. Or it's like an airline pilot dealing with an engine warning light at 30,000 feet. If the emergency manual requires them to read a legal disclaimer before telling them which button to push, the plane is going down.
That's a very vivid way to put it.
The system has to be usable while the house is on fire, so to speak. If you hand a driver a massive convoluted binder of complex reporting codes, they're going to throw in the back seat and go right back to calling you when something breaks.
Exactly. The system must work on the road, under duress, not just in a pristine boardroom presentation. Keep it short, clear, and executable under pressure.
What are the other pitfalls?
The other major pitfalls are inconsistent enforcement and zero accountability.
Inconsistent enforcement means management launches the protocol with, like, a ton of fanfare. But within a week, nobody actually follows it, and the managers themselves revert to sending casual WhatsApps.
Right.
And zero accountability means when a driver flagrantly ignores a check-in, nothing happens.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we see that communication isn't just a set of arbitrary rules. It is fundamentally about aligning human behavior with operational processes.
His leadership.
Yes. Where most businesses fail is that they try to enforce a new rule without ever explaining the why to their team. They don't explain to the driver that their 4-line text message actually prevents warehouse workers from sitting idle.
They just hand down an edict.
Right. Or they don't hold the line when the rule is broken. As the data clearly notes, without discipline, even the most elegantly designed plans fail.
Because if half the team ignores the protocol ceases to exist, you're right back to individual habits.
Exactly. But when executed correctly, when you have established clear check-ins, simple data packet formats, rigid channel discipline, and a culture of proactive updates, the impact is transformative.
It's game-changing.
It goes far beyond just knowing the GPS coordinates of your trucks. You achieve dynamic route management. You drastically reduce supply chain disruption.
Customers are happier.
Your customer relationships deepen because you become consistently, unfailingly reliable. Communication ceases to be a chaotic liability and actually becomes a tangible competitive advantage for your business.
So what does this all mean for you? I think the core takeaway here is that replacing uncertainty with control isn't just a neat operational tool. It is a fundamental leadership decision.
I agree completely.
You don't need a massive, expensive custom software system to fix bad communication. You just need clarity, consistency, and structure. Whether you are tracking 40-ton trucks arriving in Bloemfontein, or you're just trying to manage a remote team of graphic designers spread across 3 time zones. Clarity and consistency are the absolute foundations of trust.
And that leads to a thought I'd like to leave you with today.
Let's hear it.
We've explored how implementing rigid, structured communication actually increases trust and decreases the psychological burden of being micromanaged in the incredibly high-pressure world of long-distance trucking.
Right. It completely removes the mental weight of ambiguity.
So ask yourself, where else in your life, perhaps even in your personal relationships or managing your family's daily logistics, are your so-called flexible, informal habits actually creating hidden stress, missed expectations, and invisible risks?
Oh, wow. That's a great point. Sometimes a little bit of structure is exactly what we need to actually set ourselves free.
Exactly.
Well, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive. We started with the image of managing a fleet of massive trucks scattered across the country, trying to fix a chaotic system when everything is murky and based on assumptions. And we found a way out. By setting clear protocols, you are finally turning on the lights. You can see the whole operation clear as day. Thank you so much for joining us and keep exploring.